Do you want to sit?
Yeah.
So I open up the most recent one for this year and just retitle it with the date, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I open up the equivalent one for last year. So I'm in FY19, or the closest one. And I date them based on the most. Well, I'll get to that in a second. Last year's most equivalent one is 11/17/18 because today's 11/18/18. So I got these. I just resize stuff so I can look at them together to make my life easier. You don't have to do this. You can flip back and forth. You can do whatever you want. There we go. Okay. Come on. Okay. And then I go to mark scheduled reports. So whatever day I'm doing, I did them today, so I opened up the ones dated today, the 18th. But when you open them up, so the main two I use is the annual fund current donor analysis.
Okay, annual fund current donor analysis.
Which is this one.
Hang on. Current donor.
I have it open, but I'm going to close them. And then annual fund donor analysis.
Okay, annual fund donor analysis. Okay.
So the reason I use these two is because the first one, the current donor analysis, has a section that shows you how many first-time donors there are. And then these categories, recaptured and recovered, down from 2 through 6, are lapsed donors who have returned in the current fiscal year. And you'll see I have those, first-time donors and lapsed donors recaptured. That's the first set of information on this. Then we have the Leadership Gift Societies broken up, and I don't pay attention to these. I go down to the bottom. And not all of the categories are showing up right now because not all of the categories have a gift within them yet. But once we have a gift in every giving level, they'll populate. So that, of course, goes down here. And that's how I fill this in.
Okay.
$50,000, two people, $100,000. See? So I just do the categories. I ignore the total column, and then the next page has 500, 250, 100, 1 to 99. This is repeated for a reason I'll explain in a second. I'll do anomalies together. So that's what I use That's what I use the current donor analysis report for.
For this.
For this, and also for this, and for this. Okay. Yeah. And then the annual fund donors is purely the annual fund donor analysis, as it's called. The second one is purely for retention stats. So he's got all kind of stuff on here. Donor analyses. I mean, I always encourage everybody to spend as much time and talk to Mark Z as possible because he creates these reports not just because he enjoys doing tons of work that nobody pays any attention to, but because it's stuff that can be super helpful. But apparently I'm the only person who ever looked at any of these. Basically, but so, I mean, there's lots of great information in all these reports, but I'm just focusing on what I use these for to update this. So FY20 retention, how many FY19 donors overall have been retained so far this year? 464. And that's 11.4% of the donors from last year have come back this year.
Mhm.
So that gives me the retention overall, 464, 11%. And then when you go 2 pages later, you have that same number broken up by Dewey. 430 plus 34 is 464 by Dewey and non-Dewey. So I use that. I use that to fill in, obviously, John Dewey retention 34, 11%. Make this bigger. And non-Dewey retention 430,
May I
which
ask
rounds
you
up
a
to
question?
12%. Yep.
Can you scroll down to this? What are you doing since we didn't have the same categories last year?
I'm just leaving the 15 blank
Okay.
because there's not real comparison. You could figure it out if you wanted to, which I probably would if I was staying here, but I'm just gonna,
Okay.
because you already have the numbers from last year. Every
Right.
time you open this up and copy, like I copy this information
Right.
from where we were on this date in 2019 into here. I actually copied 2019, 2018. I copy all of this, right, from last year's report and just copy it here. And suddenly you have all your comparative numbers from last year. Right? Oops. Right. Well, I copied it wrong because I inserted this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So you'd have, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I thought you could just leave this open because you're not going to have a $15,000
Exactly.
level from last year. So
You're not going to have it, yeah.
you could look and figure out who the people are, but
Manually.
yeah. So those are the main numbers I get from the reports, and then you can figure out much of the rest of this from that. So for instance, once I've filled this in based on the current donor analysis, right? This part, the 50,000, all the giving levels. Then I have my Dewey subtotal 47, 197, 786 that I just copy up here. Right?
Mhm.
And I've copied the equivalent information from last year's report for the last 2 years. Last year at this time, we were at 55, right? So I just copy this into here. And I have my comparative numbers there. And then this obviously comes from this,
Yep.
right? So then you've got other information. So I'll take this slow and explain how I do this stuff. So the trustees, you can do this however you want. I've generally keep a running total each year on another tab in this report. Just expand this. So this is my, progress report. I have this sheet. This is FY19. So I would probably just create a 2020. In fact, I'll create it now. 2020 trustees. And then amount, name, right? And I'll fill this in. You don't have to
Today.
sit here while I do this, but I'll fill it in today with all the names of everybody. And then as they give, I just fill in a 1 for them, right? And the amount. And then
So-
I have them auto totaled so I know how many of the trustees have given. Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it
Yeah.
counts it. Okay.
Yep. And what I often do to check on this is another scheduled report, which is this one. Every week, this is updated weekly. It's not updated daily. Actually, no, this is updated daily. I'm sorry. This volunteer leadership giving report. You can look and find out This lists every current trustee and their giving history, and it fills it in. Sorry, because he gives data. So far in you know what? He has to update this. He hasn't updated this. Anyway, when it's updated, this will say 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, and you can tell if they've given to the annual fund.
Okay.
And then you can also look, let me find someone else who gives to multiple things. Yeah, here. So Joyce Cowan, she gave $25,000 to the annual fund in FY19. It came on 8/23/19, so that's when that showed up here. You can see that she's also given all kinds of money elsewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this total, pledges, cash, whatever, but this total is annual fund, as it says up here, annual fund summary by fiscal year.
Oh, okay.
So this lists everything they've given to every year, but this is
Okay.
just annual fund totals.
Okay.
So that's all the trustees are here in alphabetical order, and then
Is this something you asked Mark to do specifically for the annual fund for the trustee? Or
he's been creating this
Okay.
since before I started working here.
Okay.
It's created every day. It's trustees, and then you'll see trustees emeriti, so you can figure out if someone asks you how many emeriti I've given. And then it's followed by PAC, and then it's followed by alumni council. So all the volunteer leadership committees are in here with their annual giving if someone asks you. But I just check this every time I update the progress report. Actually, I don't do it every time I update it because I do it one time, and then if I see on the daily gift log that a trustee gave, I just go in and add it to my next report. But this is an easy way to check it and double check your work. Because if something's not showing up on here, then you either made a mistake or something's going on, and you can just talk to Mark and say, on Monday's daily gift log, it said that Rafita Bowers gave, but I
It's
don't
not
see her on
showing.
that. She's not showing up in the volunteer leadership. I don't think that's ever happened, actually, but just in case. So those three reports cover almost everything in one way or another in the progress report. Right? Because this is my trustees, I have to update it for this year. I haven't done that, as you can see, but last year there were three. Three of them had given by this date. So then we get to Maxine Green Society, right? So Maxine Green Society. I was just updating this, but I'll update it live in front of you. So the first thing I do is I have queries under my folder. Richard. Maxine Greens, I created it for this year. Maxine Greens in FY20 updated. So you just got to go in here and refresh it. But then you have to export it because it double counts people. So see how this person's listed 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
So this number is not
It's an
actually
export. Okay.
100% right. Eventually it won't be 100% right. So I refresh that, and then I just go to export, and I have an export called Maxine Green
What was
Oh, okay.
export.
what was the query? The name of the query?
Maxine Green,
Maxine
FY20.
Green's in FY20 updated.
Updated.
And every time you update a query, if in your view in Razor's Edge you have last run as a choice, which you can add or take it away by just going here and saying columns. These are the ones I don't have showing up, but I have name, type, description, created by, last run, last changed, blah, blah, blah. So you can see that I ran it on 11/18/2019.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're updating your thing a week later, you can say, well, when did I run Maxine Green's last? Oh, it was last week on 11/18.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you run it, right? So run now or the exclamation point, they mean the same
Refresh.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then save it. It will save the date that you most recently updated it. Okay. And then I go to export. And in my folder, I have an export called Maxine Green Export.
Maxine
Updated.
Green export updated. Okay.
I'm
And
going to
then
update it right now. So I would select
include selected record.
Maxine Greens, and I'll save it with this saved in here in FY20 updated. So this query will be in here. Once you've refreshed it, you can come in here and export it. Just going to save this. So I have to change the outputs because I had it set up for last fiscal year. So what that means is I want to change the giving
To this year's.
criteria because
Well,
these people have to have given this year
Right.
to be
To
counted.
be counted.
You don't really need to look at all of this. All you want to do is get a number count, actually, which is really what you have to worry about. But I'm just showing you how I update these queries because it works for other stuff too. So you just go into criteria. I'm going to change it to this year.
9/1/19 to 8/1/20. Yeah. Okay.
And then
Okay.
I'm going to change the column heading so that it says FY20.
Change the column heading.
Right. And then I'll change this to 19.
20. 19.
Change the column heading. That should be 18. Blah, blah, blah. You hit print.
How far back you go? 10 years?
20.
Okay.
No, I go back to 1900. If there's any open pledge from ever, it will show up there.
Okay.
And then recurring gifts. I do this 5 years. 2020, so 17. Just in case someone set up a recurring gift, 4 years ago or whatever. So that's it. You won't have to do anything with that now. It's updated.
It's updated. Okay.
So basically, I make sure I have the Maxine Greens in FY20 selected. I do export. You can save it wherever you want. I had a folder. I'll just create a folder now. Last year I had a folder. Oh, I do have a folder. Good. Maxine Green Society. I'm just going to create a new folder. Numbers, updates. Because you need somewhere to export to. So FY20 as of, and I do whatever date I'm doing it on. It starts to export. You don't even have to wait for it to export the whole thing because once it gets up to like 2,200 people next summer, it takes forever to export.
Mm.
So see how it starts showing you progress?
Right.
If you hover, it tells you how many records, and that's how many Maxine Greens there are, 374. So then I just cancel this instead of waiting for the whole thing.
Okay.
And I've got my number. So current Maxine Greens is 374. I hadn't set this up yet last year, so I don't have equivalent numbers, but eventually you're going to open up a equivalent progress report from last year, and it'll be in there, and you can copy it like all the other information. But I'm just going to show it to you in a later one. So progress reports, let's just go to like March. So you'll see I had the Maxine Greens in March. We were up to these numbers. I only X'd them because I didn't have update. I hadn't done these queries yet last year. I think I was looking at something Mark did and I realized it wasn't as accurate. So that's that stuff. That's basically what I do.
Okay.
And I mean, now that I have it created, like now that you can just copy from an equivalent report from last year, it makes it much easier. Last year, I was creating stuff because I didn't always have an equivalent report from the prior year.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing the same thing. You know, I would look at these in the current year, and then I would go back and find his equivalent reports in the prior year, and I would be like inputting and adding all this stuff. But now you should just use my reports from last year and just copy and paste it in, and you have the last 2 years.
From last year.
Yeah.
So it's easy.
So it's a little complicated. It's like you're finding stuff in multiple places, but it's more accurate than the 2-year report in many ways.
Why?
Because the 2-year
'Cause I know
report, the way
somebody
you
will ask us. Somebody will.
well,
ask
and Mark Z can explain to you why too. But it's because the way you guys had the 2-year report set up, it doesn't calculate soft credits in the same way. So you're skewing numbers. You're sometimes double counting people, or in other cases, you're not counting people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because so for instance, when you want to figure out money, you don't want to double count a soft credit.
No.
Because it looks like you have twice as much money as you
we
do.
always had. That's why
Right.
we had to look through the
Right.
whole thing. And
That's
take
what
out
and
double.
that's what I mean. You also had to sit there and by hand adjust it
Yeah.
to try to get accurate
Yeah.
numbers. And it's dependent on, do you miss somebody one time and not miss them another time?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a soft credit? You know, whatever. Like there's just all kind of variables.
Or a special Dewey that's
Yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
special kind of
So,
counting.
however, for donor numbers, you do want to include soft credits in certain circumstances. For instance, I'm an alum, she's an alum, and we're married,
Mm-hmm.
and I give. But you have 2 donors who gave. 2 alums made a gift.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So to me, like they have to be counted in your Maxine Green numbers. They should be counted in your renewed numbers because 2 donors came back. And if they ever divorced, they'd be counted separately.
And if they were Dewey,
So they
they
should
would
be
2
counted
Deweys would be
separately
counted
now.
as well.
Yeah,
If they,
yeah. So, you know, in certain circumstances you want to count soft credits and others you don't. It depends on what kind of data you're looking at.
Here's my question: if both of them are donors, let's say they're both Deweys, isn't that still kind of double counting because it's really they both gave $1,000? So isn't that counting like John Doe and Jane Doe $1,000 twice still?
Listen to what I just said again. When you're counting money,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to count it twice.
Right. Okay.
When you're counting number of donors,
Okay,
you
so
do want to count.
okay, so it's just the number of
Yes.
donors you're talking.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
that part didn't register.
That's
okay.
that's
Got
that's
it,
why,
got it.
and that report
Okay.
pulls soft credits in a certain
It doesn't
way.
discriminate. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're just sort of, you guys had to do a lot of manual work to get
Whereas this
close
distinguishes
to
it.
accurate numbers. These are much closer to accurate as they are. They're not 100% accurate in every case. You might be off a little bit here or there.
But
And
it's
it's just
more-
the nature of automatic reports and numbers and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But these are as close to 100% accurate as possible without having to do an hour's worth of sorting and deleting and I'm going to copy and paste this and all right, this is my list now.
Mm-hmm.
I just personally found that it was much easier to go in and pull the numbers I need, and all of a sudden I had a progress report. You know, this past year it ended up, you know, I got to the point where I could do it in 15 or 20 minutes. You know what I mean? And it's you're set.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Can you tell me why? And this is my understanding only, which it could be
Yeah.
untrue.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me the difference between our final numbers and like what Hank has?
Well, I can explain to you what I think was the difference. You might have much less of a difference now.
Okay.
For instance, for the first time in FY19, I was reporting more money than them. And that's because those two big trustee gifts came in after the books technically closed. And Tom Bailey told Suzanne to tell me to count them in our numbers, but they didn't.
Mm.
Oh,
Okay? But prior to this one exception, what I think was happening was pretty much that. So right now, they're $100,000 ahead of where we are in terms of what they think has been raised in FY20 because of those two trustee gifts. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they counted it in FY20, we counted it in FY19,
Okay.
right? And Mark entered it so that they don't show up in his scheduled report numbers. That 100,000.
Because we already counted
showing
it,
up right
yeah.
now, because he dated the gift 8/31,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
so it doesn't pull it in these
Right.
reports. So at the end of the year, they're gonna have $100,000 more than you guys do
Okay.
on the books for this year. So you're gonna be reporting a number, and if they still operate the way it used to operate, because God knows what will happen. But if it happens the way
Know that
it
we're
had
gonna-
in the
yeah.
past,
They're going to be over.
You know, you guys will say we raised $2.4 million,
And they see
and they're gonna
2.5.
go, well, we have 2.5, and you're gonna be like, what the fuck? But it's because those two $50,000 gifts, they counted them in FY20.
Okay.
That's what happened. That's 90% of what happened. I suspect also that what happened was, and you don't really need to understand this, they need to understand this. In other words, this is something that the finance people should be able to describe. But what I suspect happened also was something to do with the way GAD monies are recorded, and what I used to refer to as Spence. I think they have different terminology here, but as temporary restricted annual fund money. So in other words, let me think of an example. Well, an alum dies,
Yep.
and we get $75,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the powers that be decide we don't want all that $75,000 to go into FY20. We want to split over the next 3 years, $25,000 each.
Right.
And an agreement's made about that, and it's put on the books in the finance office that way. And so they're reporting a certain number, and meanwhile here, it's showing up slightly differently.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? That's something else that I think accounted for some of that discrepancy.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the important thing I think for you guys to remember, and I'm going to emphasize this with Susan too, is that fact that gifts come in late, we backdate the gift date to 8/31, but they book it as 9/30.
Mm-hmm.
So then
That's
the next year
We're gonna be under them.
numbers. We're tracking numbers with those two gifts recorded last fiscal year, so they're not showing up in the numbers this year.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the year, say, well, this is what we have for you for the annual fund, and you're like, well, this is $100,000 less. What the hell?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're counting that. But again, that's not all of it, because I tried not to double count ever, because my attitude would be, well, you guys counted it last year, so I can't count that again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, because according to the finance, you made your goal and beat it by 100,000. According to me, we made the goal and we're $500 over the goal. Do you know what I'm saying? So well, that's up to them how they want to deal with that at the board level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which number are they going to look at?
Yeah.
But I will say one thing that, and I'm again going to say this to Susan and I already have. That's the kind of thing where someone like Katie Conway,
We'll see. And
reputationally, from what I've heard, because she did it at the library and she did it with the Career Center and she's done it in other places, will go in and start digging around your numbers and say, wait a minute, finance says this and you guys are reporting this to hell. You're incompetent. You didn't know what you were doing. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, if you actually understood numbers, you wouldn't even be able to get those words out of your mouth. because finance reports in one way because they're legally required to, and development reports another way because it's based on what donors give in a fiscal year and intend to give in a fiscal year. So I'm not saying maybe she won't do that, but you know,
But it's
that's possible.
Past history.
And it's easy to do with numbers. It's easy to do with numbers.
I know it is.
Yeah.
I know it is.
I mean, I could take our numbers from last year and make them
And
look
find trouble,
8 different ways if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I
And
could
find
make
it,
them
yeah.
look 10 times better than they already do. If I really wanted to. It's just a matter of presentation. I could also make them look 100 times worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've always just tried to be as honest and direct as possible and at least understand what differences are and why we're presenting numbers this way versus finance says that. Because then I feel like I'm confident that we're doing something on the up and up, which I just believe in general in life, unlike some people. And and then
I have no idea who you're talking about.
and then also, you know, I feel like I just want to have a handle on that because if I'm setting goals for the next year, and I don't mean what number are you going to raise, I mean like how are we going to raise whatever number you tell us to raise. Like I want to know, I want to really be able to understand, well, actually those people didn't give yet this year, so we can ask them for another $50,000 each. Because according to them and according to us, they gave for FY19. According to finance, it's already in FY20. But I'm not going to tell the donor that.
Right.
Because the donor got an acknowledgement for FY19 because the thing was postmarked 8/31.
And we want them
You know
giving
what I
again
mean?
in FY20.
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
like,
So, but that's where I think a Katie could look and go, oh, you counted
yeah. She could.
whatever her name is who came
Because
in.
she
That's
doesn't read it the way-
50,000 that came in October or whatever. Marla Schaefer or whatever. You counted her twice. Well, no, we didn't count her twice. We didn't count her
Right.
in
On our
FY20
books. Right.
until her gift that came, you know, in August 2020.
Right. Right.
Finance
Did it differently.
counted her last year. Or I mean, counted her in this year.
This
Yeah.
year.
So
we
they're
counted.
counting her twice,
Mhm.
but that's according to their accounting. They're not actually
Right.
doing anything wrong either.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
So both books
It's
are
just a
correct
timing
based
issue.
on the way
Yeah,
we report.
yeah.
Each reports their
Right.
figures. But you'd think she would know that. I mean, they would.
Well,
they-
and she might. I don't know what she knows and doesn't know.
Yeah.
I just suspect that nobody over in the president's office knows as much as maybe you would hope they would about fundraising. But
yeah.
so.
Doesn't look that way.
Yeah.
So that's why, and you know, and it's not to say that I didn't think and don't still think that the 2-year report that you guys ran is valuable in other respects. I just found that if I want to update my numbers once or twice a week, which I tend to like to do, particularly once you get past December, so you can really see where are we lagging, where are we ahead, you know, what should I be worried about. It was much easier to do it this way because I could do it like that in 20 minutes twice a week, and I was done. I didn't have to remember, oh, I got to delete that person, but not delete that person, whatever.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
So.
That makes
Cool.
There are 2 other reports that we updated that I want to show you guys, but I think I'm going to wait till we meet with Susan this week in one of those meetings because I want her to see it too because she should probably take care of it. But what it is it's similar to this breakdown, but it shows you retention across giving levels.
Okay.
And it's what I used when we were having to account for that 500,000 and 1,500 level last year. But I figured it would be useful to keep it this year because Mark and I didn't just do those 3 levels, we did it for everything. So I'll just show you what it looks like, but we'll go over how to update it. And that one's really easy to update actually. But it looked like this.
Numbers and statistics.
This. So in FY8, this is from last fiscal year. In FY18, 18 people gave it the $50,000 level, right? 16 of those 18 came back and gave 50,000 again in FY19. 2 of them decreased to 25,000.
Okay.
So we retained all 18 of them, which is 100% retention rate, according to me. According to Suzanne, if you remember, we retained 90% of them or
Right.
whatever, because only 16 of them gave the same amount, 2
Right.
decreased,
'Cause
right?
that's what she was looking
But you can see all of this for every gift level. So in FY18, 1,292 people gave between $100 and $250. And 723 of them came back and gave the same amount. 56 increased to 250. 7 went up to 500. 5 went to 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 went up to 2,500.
Mm.
And then some of them decreased. So
And
there's a way to automate.
Where's this report?
Well, I'm putting it in the I'm at for this year. I put it in the progress reports.
Okay.
It just has another folder within it.
Okay.
So progress reports. See that? Yeah, I would just save them under progress reports, but then database. This is this. So you would go in. Save that. I gotta remember where you put that. AF donors. What can you call it?
We're gonna
Anyway,
talk
I'll do it.
about
I'll do
again.
it. Yeah, we'll talk about it again. I'll do it for last year again.
But we're
There's an export he created, and I'll give you the names of them, and you just say export now, and you actually have to let this one run, and it goes to a temp area of your database. Any one of you can run this export for this year, and just don't try to save it yourself. Just let it do what it's set up to do. Once this export is done, all you have to do is go into these and open this, which is an Access database. And click on 1920 retention. Yeah, see, I haven't exported the file yet, so it won't let me do it. But you'd click on that, and data would appear, and then you'd hit refresh all, and it will update with the export you just did. And then you just copy this and paste it into the Excel chart. So I'm going to do one with you guys before
okay.
later this week.
Okay.
We'll do both of these, and I have one for donors and I have one for dollars. So those donors and dollars you'll notice they'll be slightly different than this, but there are some reasons for that I'll explain. But it's going to be very close. It's always really close. But mainly, I would say, you probably don't even have to do the dollars. I would mainly say just update the one with the retention so that you can see how people
Okay.
are being retained across levels, since they seem so interested in that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Retention is the big priority.
And I mean, it can also be a useful tool, in the second half of the fiscal year. You run that and you see, oh, look, I don't know, a lot of our 5,000s haven't come back. Who are they?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can look them up and try to make sure you get them to renew. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh shit, look, we've lost
So and so.
10,
Yeah.
2500s. That's probably some of them are probably my annual fund scholar donors, so I'm going to need to make them up.
Yeah.
Or maybe call them and ask them if they'd give an additional 1,500 so they go back to 25. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just a
What
way
to
to
do,
trigger
strategize,
you
yeah.
too. Like, you guys can use it internally just to trigger yourselves with certain things. So the other thing, I should mark this, Colleen, but you know this, the segmentation folder, it's in there.
No, I know.
And so the segmentation chart's there. Oh, I know. I got an answer for Cassandra. So, Mark, let me ask a question. If I put stuff on your calendar and Mark Z's calendar right now for the end of the fiscal year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's me doing it, if you all accept it, once they eliminate me and my calendar disappears, it will still be on your calendars, I'm assuming, right?
I hope.
I
I'm
think
not sure.
so.
Once we accept, I would think it would still be.
Because
there.
I'm wondering if you guys need to initiate instead of me. Since
Initiate.
the
the
meeting.
calendar, basically, Mark suggested that I put the scheduling for
Oh, okay.
when reports are coming from Leicester and when reports are going to them
Okay.
every week through the end of the phone-a-thon effort in February, just as a reminder to him, but to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then also that I put some key dates, that I have you guys put some key dates on in his calendars for like, oh, we know we want it looks like we want the winter mailing to go out March 5th. So we need to meet with him, at the beginning of February to get him to do the export for us or whatever, like stuff like that. So I don't know if maybe we should just do it on somebody else's calendar.
Yeah, just to play it safe, because God forbid they delete everything for you, and then all of a sudden everything falls off.
So why don't I
Yeah.
print out, why don't we talk about that now and we can write it down by hand and then we can do it another time, like
Okay.
on the calendar this week. But why don't I print out your schedule, Colleen, because that will help us think about this. I've written the trustee letter, so I'm gonna leave this with Susan to get Bill Rickards' approval. And I created a pledge form template, which just needs to be made for all the trustees, but I updated it.
Mhm.
So we'll get that.
Okay, we'll change the
We'll
year.
get that in
Okay.
there. I already.
Oh, you did?
changed
Oh,
it.
12/5,
You-
good.
You need
Okay.
you need to make them for everybody. Now.
Gotcha. Okay.
Keep this. Solicitation code. Okay. And I'm gonna write a PAC letter, and I'm gonna write a parents letter.
Okay.
So they'll all be in there, and then Susan can just take them and get Jeff Colin's approval, and get president's approval for the PAC letter, get Bill's approval for this, and they'll be ready. You guys can just merge them and mail them.
Okay.
The parents' letter she'll have to coordinate. No, we have electronic signatures of Jeff and his wife, so all we got to do is enter the electronic
Jeff Colvin.
signatures because he won't sign them by hand, which kind of sucks. But I don't blame him because there's like 300 of them, so
Mm-hmm.
we can just print them out and send them in December. We're setting up emails through the end of December. Like they'll be in there. What else?
I think
What
that's-
else can I help with before you guys go?
Um,
Are you all right? You can probably
good.
stop filming. No, I'm
We're
not
good?
doing any more
Okay.
computer stuff right now.